this is Dr. Patti Peeples with the People's Collaborative, and welcome to the next episode of Patti's People, sponsored by the Evidence Base. Today, my guest is Dr. Jagpreet Chhatwal. Jag is director at Mass General Hospital for the Institute of Technology and Assessment. He's also an associate professor at Harvard, co-founder of the Value Analytics Lab, and he's a meditation coach. Jag, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Patti.
Jag, you have such an interesting background, and you've really woven, I think, a lot of your interest and your areas of focus beautifully together into this highly interesting place as a health policy advisor. For our listeners, start us back when you were a PhD student and take us up to where you are today. And what was the catalyst for you to be doing the kind of work you're doing?
Yes, thanks for asking this question. This is something very dear to my heart. And going back during my PhD days, I was lost when I was doing my PhD, what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I'm doing PhD, what is the purpose, why I'm doing this? All these questions were coming in mind naturally at that time. I'm going to spend years on some topic. Is that something really I want to do? And at that time, I was working on mathematical optimization problems. And it was not exciting to me. And then there was something that I need to change my area application where I can relate myself, my work to more as on the human side of things. And that's how I got into healthcare field. And I listened to a talk where the speaker was talking about using mathematical models to optimize liver transplant allocation. And for me, that was, wow, okay, even we can do things like that, was a eureka moment. And I thought something I would like to do similar in my research and my focus. So that just happened that that person became my advisor. I started exploring. At that time, AI was something new that's coming up. I learned AI, combining with mathematical modeling, decision science in my PhD thesis. But again, after that, I didn't know what to do with that. After done with my PhD, it was good. I liked it. It was a great application. I wanted to be in academia and more on the health policy side, health economics side. But I was not trained for that. My background was more on the mathematical side. It took me 3 years to find my first academic job after PhD. Mm-hmm. But right after PhD, I got an opportunity to work in industry as a health economist. Those 3 years were very useful for my training. What I learned working in industry, doing hands-on health economic modeling, understanding what the needs are, how do we connect the dots, what is the value. So those 3 years helped me build my career when I switched to academia, which is unusual, going to industry and to academia. So that 3 years helped me shape my research from that point onwards.
So, Jag, now you focus in the policy around HTA decision making. Tell us a little bit about what you think that we could do better with HTA evaluation in the US and worldwide. Speak to the methodology, intent, how vassal we are with the information. Put this into context of what's good and where do we need to go with it.
Mm-hmm. So HTA the field has been moving forward at some regular pace, but now recently with the availability of generative AI, a lot has changed. We can very quickly gather information. We can use AI to do a lot of tasks which earlier were not easy or accessible. And the power of Gen AI is that we do not need to have a PhD in computer science to use that. Anybody with some basic training can utilize the power and potential of generative AI. And that's where I see is a big opportunity for the HTA to utilize this technology and make it more accessible to people that can have a big impact in our field. Mm-hmm. For instance, we can use AI, Gen AI, for evidence synthesis. We can very quickly do systematic reviews, meta-analysis. We can identify gaps. We can build models, health economic models using generative AI. We can evaluate those models using generative AI. Now, this is a field is evolving. The technology is evolving. It's not perfect there, but we can see certainly a huge potential for this opportunity.
And so, from an HTA organization's perspective, they're all extremely reticent to put a stake in the field that AI can be used. Certainly, the systematic literature review, consolidation of information is probably the area that they're most willing to give some acceptance to. But you touched on health economic modeling. Is there any HTA association organization that is closest to accepting that as a use of AI?
So we don't know that if in what capacity HTA will accept it, but we are already having conversations with NICE, for instance. They are definitely interested in exploring the potential of generative AI in health economic modeling, what it can do, and then they can see that the future is moving in that direction. So NICE is one of the early adapters, and many others will follow the footsteps of NICE, hopefully.
If you had to give our audience a year that NICE would say, yes, I accept AI-based health economic models, give us an estimate.
Maybe 3 years.
Okay.
2 years. I don't know. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What is specifically do they need to see and hear in order to move forward to that?
Yes. So first, I think this is true for each one of us. We need to understand the potential of this technology, what it can do, and what are the limitations of this technology. So that requires training. So that is very important. So training of the people who are working in HTAs, people who are going to be submitting using these technologies, they also need to be trained. So that is number one is needed. And then very openly acknowledging the strengths and limitations. So that requires discussions, bringing in different stakeholders, because the perspectives can be different for different stakeholders. So all they need to be discussed and understood to make a bigger impact of this technology.
Well, who are the organizations that are going to drive those two, that are going to depress those two levers? Who's going to deliver the education and training? Who's going to deliver the validation?
So here I see ISPOR can play a big role. And we already have a working group on generative AI. Some of us are involved in these discussions. What kind of trainings, materials we need to develop? What are some of the educational information that we need to release to the audience? And hopefully in the future, we'll have discussion boards on this topic involving different stakeholders.
You know, this is a conversation that you and I had briefly when we met before. Give me an argument against the fact that HEOR analysis has actually not contributed to a better expenditure of our limited funds, but in fact, the work that has been done has actually contributed to a rise in drug prices, and it's increasing the lack of affordability. Mm-hmm. Counter that or agree with it?
So I would argue this by taking an example of hepatitis C research, where I've been involved for the last 10 years or more. In 2014, the new drugs became available for treatment. They were highly effective, but expensive from that perspective. We developed tools looking at the cost effectiveness of those drugs in different countries. And we showed that in many countries, these drugs they're highly cost effective first. And in some countries, they are cost saving. Mm-hmm. So that was very important information that was needed to increase the use of those drugs. We collaborated with the World Health Organization. We developed a tool at that time called HEPC calculator, interactive tool, publicly available, that was used by the WHO and the government to negotiate with the prices on that, and bringing down the prices. We could show that at a given price, treatment is cost effective or cost saving. And once you have shown that something is cost saving, then there is really a value, then there's no point of then holding that treatment because it will result in cost savings down the road.
Right.
So that helped with the negotiating, bringing down the prices in some countries where the treatment was not cost saving or was marginally cost saving.
You know, Hep C is a great example of that because not only did the drugs deliver cost savings, not just cost effectiveness, but cost savings, but it was also highly integrated, if you will, with the treatment approaches and the overall health policy surrounding the disease state and its treatment. That doesn't happen in most of our areas of focus, right? If we take something like cholesterol reduction or some other mass chronic disease, we health economists have a really different bar to reach. Can you argue the efficacy of this kind of work in those areas?
I think it depends upon the innovation. If it also tells us the value of innovation. With Hep C, the innovation was many folds. It reached to a different level, and there was the prevalence of disease is high, so there are many people who needed treatment. So bringing that highly innovative treatment for a large population has a big impact. So Hep C is, as you mentioned, is a very unique case. It doesn't. I don't think it applies to many other diseases where we can see that we have a highly prevalent disease. We have almost a cure for that disease. Treatment is cost saving, but it requires upfront investment. So these are all like the positives, and the challenges was the initial investment. So that's why there was so much pushback on treating Hep C.
Jag, what big research question is looming in your mind that if you could gather the resources, both financial and people, that you would like to focus on and solve? What keeps you up at night?
I would say it's mental health is a big area. There we have not have effective solutions. And the problem is on the rise. The anxiety, depression related to that, addiction, they all are on the rise. And we don't have effective drugs. We don't have interventions that are effectively utilized in the population. So how do we really make this world a better place? Mental health is going to be an important area that we have to all think about. And it affects many people in this country and throughout the world.
And a part of your life, a part of your ethos and the way that you show up to your job and to your family has been based on meditation and the work that you have done, as well as that you're bringing to others. Can you weave the story of how you experience the benefits of meditation in your own life and how you are now looking at it as an area of research?
Yes. So I have been meditating for 20 years now. The first time I meditated, it was just by accident. I just happened to be in a workshop. It's a breath-based workshop. I didn't even know that it's a thing, like breathing is a thing. I attended that, did 30 minutes of practice called Sky or Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, and my mind was quiet. It was the first time I realized that my mind was running all that time. So that stuck with me. I've been practicing for the 20 years. I'm an instructor now, went over like 1,000 hours of training to start teaching these programs. I've seen the benefits in my own life, the clarity it brings, the contentment and peace of mind that it brings. And that helps us in our day-to-day life and also in our professional life. It brings more clarity, brings confidence, and gives us some perspective to think about what we want to do in our life. So I'm very grateful for like I got introduced to this when I was in my early 20s.
And what kind of research are you currently doing or hoping to do that leans on that knowledge?
Yes. So now we recently conducted a systematic review of what is really like breath-based meditations. There's so many types of breathing practices. What is the effectiveness? What has been studied in what areas? So we collected almost 300 research studies which are looking at different types of breathing practices, the impact on different functions of our well-being, of physical, emotional, then addiction related, all these. And we're compiling all this together and which we see that. And where are the gaps? So that is our first step, is understanding where the gaps are.
Mhm.
And then second, we're looking at now since I'm as a health economist, I'm naturally interested in looking at the health, the economic impact of such interventions, which we know that they're not going to be expensive as some of the treatments there, and they don't have many side effects, if any.
Mhm.
So how do we really show that the population level impact of meditation based interventions?
Let's get back to thinking about health economics as a whole. And it sounds like you've already run into one area where a traditional way of assessing an intervention, that model doesn't necessarily fit, for example, meditation, because there typically aren't side effects and that sort of, and safety issues. What are some of the areas that you think about that health economists need to expand their thinking, they need to refine their thinking, they need to readjust their analytic approach to deliver more useful impact?
To increase the impact, we need to understand what is holding us from having that impact. And I think that in the question, it's implied that health economics as a field can have more impact than it is right now. And what is it? And in my opinion, it is the competing interests of different parties.
Mhm.
Like from one side, the payers, if the objective is to maximize the use of health economics to maximize the pricing for the interventions products. From the payer side, it is to minimize their expenses. So
Mhm.
these competing interests play a role, and that gives them the opportunity to criticize some of the weaknesses.
Mhm.
And if, for example, QALYs is quality adjusted life years is one example, which can be easily criticized for
Mhm.
its limitations. But it serves a purpose. It has a
Mhm.
role, and we cannot simply get rid of QALYs in our health economic equation.
Mhm.
If we get rid of that, basically then we are saying that any intervention that improves quality of life has no value. Like a
Mhm.
cure of blindness would not really extend your life, but it substantially improves the quality of life. Then how would you value that
Mhm.
if we ignore QALYs? So there are some challenges. Obviously, QALYs is not the perfect
Mhm.
metric, but it is a metric that is useful. Do we have a better option than QALYs is the question. And
Mhm.
if not, then we need to utilize that. So
Mhm.
those competing interests, going back to your question, is they sometimes bring down the impact because then it becomes politically charged topic. And
Mhm.
people who do not understand the health economics field, they can easily criticize those limitations, picking certain limitations.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, what we need is having education, like educating the right stakeholders, what is health economics as a field is doing, that hopefully can increase the impact further.
Have you seen anything that is a good overview of all of the uh, areas that health economics has really had a substantial impact on?
No, actually not.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. If we have such a document, some white paper, or some policy statement which has been widely disseminated,
Mhm.
that could be very useful for many, many stakeholders.
You know, you said something earlier that made me think that it's the yin to the private health insurer's yang. Health economics is, and maybe that's good enough, that it is a checks and balance to the competing interest, as you so clearly said. Much like the branches of the government, don't individually function alone for the greatest benefit of the whole, but in concert as the triad, then those checks and balances do serve the greater good.
Mhm.
It's a slightly different perspective on the value of health economics as a counter to competing interest. But whether that's the benefit of HEOR or it needs to stand alone and truly have its own impact, like your work with Hep C did, either way, we've been pretty bad storytellers of our impact.
Mhm. Yes, yes, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about the COVID simulator that you were involved in as an advisor to the White House, and explain what was unique about that, how that process of coming up with a COVID simulator can be an excellent template for other health policy kinds of problems.
Yes. So COVID was a very unique situation for, as we all know, we had to make decisions very quickly, very rapidly, with the information that is available to us at that time. And most of the times it was only partial information. So that motivated us to develop an interactive platform which can be updated on a regular basis. It can be utilized by anyone. It is publicly available and can incorporate as the information is changing. Like there's certain assumptions we had to make, but as the assumptions change, we can easily see the impact of those assumptions on the outcomes. So that motivated us to disseminate the findings very rapidly. But there's certain things we learned during that COVID time, that what level of information should we release to the right audience. And anything that we put on the simulator, that was being picked by media, because the outcomes were of interest to wider audience, general
Mhm.
public. And we had to be careful with how we disseminate information, what is being disseminated to the right audience. And too much detail is not necessarily good, but there was times when even like the information has to be enough detailed so that it's not taken out of context, was also something that we learned.
Mhm. So if I could summarize, what you recognize that there also needed to be some sort of translation approach to taking the critical information that you were developing through the simulator, but that it couldn't just be put out there in its raw form, that you recognize that there needed to be an important focus on how you translated that information to the wider audience.
Mhm. Yeah, you summarize it nicely. Yes.
Couldn't that be said for almost everything we as health economists do? And isn't it interesting that we've not yet really filled that role very well with effective translators?
That's right, actually. Yes, we need this information for almost every work, any projects we do. And this goes back to that earlier question, the impact, why health economics does not have the impact as much as it should.
Hmm.
It's again tied with the right, like dissemination to the right stakeholders, the information.
Hmm.
And we are not trained as a scientist, health economists to in this field. What information to disseminate? How do we talk with the reporters? So
Hmm.
that's part of the training. Maybe we should consider.
Well, in a way, it's a bit of the Tower of Babel. It's just all of this conversation that is taking place that can't move beyond the can't move beyond the population to have an impact. And so one either assumes that the impact isn't there, or simply ignores the work because it's just too complicated.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a real missing thing, I think. I've been increasingly interested in how wisdom and how the coalescence of knowledge over one's career enables them to accept or reject information more easily. And they say that wisdom is the ability to change your mind when new or contradictory information comes to you. That somehow, as we get wiser, we don't hold on to constructs so tightly because we recognize that things are not as black and white as we wish they were. What is an example in your career where you have been able to take on new and contradictory information and really have that guide you in a different direction?
I'll again bring back hepatitis C research, the work. So when we started looking at the cost effectiveness of drugs, there was a lot of pushback during that time. The prices are very high, they're unaffordable. So that influenced our thinking, how we were seeing that problem. And we are aware of it or not, many times we have these implicit biases. And I would say that time the bias was that the prices are very high, we need to bring them down when we were doing the research. And what we found interesting was that when we did the analysis, this is the first time, very new drug, everybody's talking about a cure, unaffordability, and we look at the cost effectiveness, it comes out cost effective.
Mm-hmm.
So that does not align with the message that we had in our mind initially.
Mm-hmm.
We started looking at further. There were reasons there, like there's the pushback because though they're cost effective, they're unaffordable. If you have to treat 1 million people, it's going to cost billions of dollars at those prices. And no payer has that much money to pay at that time. So there's certainly reasons for that. But then you compare that $50,000, $80,000 cure with another drug which is already being reimbursed, which adds 3 months of life. It's not a cure. How would you justify that? So again, there were arguments. There were right arguments from different parties, different perspectives. So that brought us to the more neutral side of really evaluating what is it. That is the price right or is not priced right?
Mm-hmm.
Should the prices come down or not? If they come down, how much they should come down? And we saw that with time, very quickly the prices came down to the point they became cost saving.
Mm-hmm.
So then our perspective shifted to making this drug widely available. Now,
Mm-hmm.
as a health economist, we know that once something is cost saving, you really have to scale up.
Mm-hmm.
If as simple as if treating somebody saves $1,000, you treat 10 people, you save $10,000. It's simple math.
Mm-hmm.
And then we shifted our perspective to focusing on that aspect of the cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
And that work was led into we collaborated with started with the World Health Organization. Then we had a collaboration with the CDC, developing tools,
Mm-hmm.
forming the cost savings, cost effectiveness of Hep C treatments in different populations.
Mm-hmm.
And then came the opportunity to work with the White House.
Mm-hmm.
So they invited us the White House last year launched a national hepatitis C elimination plan. And what they need is to show that this can be cost saving.
Mm-hmm.
So there, we as health economists, we did the analysis for them.
Speaking of the White House, what's on your mind with the election, and what kinds of things are you going to be looking for on the health policy front?
Yeah, I don't get too much involved into politics. So we all have our preferences for one party or the other. I've seen that I don't expect major changes happening, irrespective of whoever the next president comes. That's my stake on that. So I'm not seeing as a big shift happening in the next 4 years.
Okay. Well, Jag, I think we've come to the end of our interview. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
No, thank you. It has been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed it too. I'm going to make a pitch that you get some of your graduate students to start gathering the impact and lack thereof of health economics.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, really, really challenge, really challenge them.